Did you see the roads
That's
are
really
buckling?
nice. Yeah, I was gonna attack your age.
Bless you, man.
No, multiple people.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That kid is a big one.
Okay.
And the big insult to me at the same time.
No.
They didn't say evil.
You looking very good.
Oh, I made the one at the time. I'm just sitting here daydreaming.
You have 5 minutes. You're good.
Okay.
Is Kathy Williams coming, or are you just approving?
Just approving.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to reapprove, otherwise the committee won't have a chair first.
I know.
She is fantastic too. She keeps that community going.
Missed you at lunch.
Suze, do we have any public comments or anything?
No public comments.
Go for it, yours.
I'm surprised you picked the energy. That's your chair.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, this is a different room, you know? In that other room, that chair at the head, that's the one I feel comfortable. This one, it didn't seem right, so I took it to change.
Your room's got its own vibe, right?
Gonna mess with your thing.
Yeah, I'm not really a big food practitioner. I probably should be. Oh, good to see you. Snuck in.
They're not out till, I think 4 or 5, so I think that's. Yeah, they're BRC BPA, Mark my eyes. They do a good job with it. It runs like almost on the date, and then the school schedule is from 7 to 5:30. They do some learning activities to try and avoid learning loss over the summer.
Right.
And then, they also do fun stuff like field trips.
Do they still have a garden out there? That was like kindergartners who had a garden.
Oh, I don't even know.
Oh,
She
when my
knows.
daughter was there, the fishing gardeners had a garden and they kept. You can see it from the caves.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mrs. kids go there during regular year, so she knows a little better than I do.
I didn't even know that they did a summer camp.
Yeah, she's the one who keep me doing a shower. And it's relatively inexpensive. It's like $55 for the summer.
Yeah, we never could have done that when my kids were that age. That's good though.
All right, it's 3:30. I will call this meeting of the Faculty Senate Executive Committee to order. This meeting, June 23rd, 2022. I will call, or Suzanne, Ms. Knoll, you're here. Dr. Knoll, please call roll.
Professor Lopez,
Here.
Professor McMillan, not here. Professor King.
Here.
Professor San is not here. Professor Bazayev,
On her way.
on her way, yeah. Professor Rowland, Professor Lane, Professor Tyrone,
Here.
Professor Joy, Professor Singh.
Okay, very good. We have some guests in the room. Will you mind to please introduce yourselves for the record?
Good afternoon, I'm Natalie Robertson. I'm new with the Office of General Counsel, Assistant General Counsel over there. Nice to meet you, nice to be here.
Anthony, I'm Trey Jones, Deputy General Counsel for LSU.
All right, very good. Are there any public comments registered?
None.
Okay, no public comments. Let the record show no public comments. All right, President's update. So what's occurred over the last 2 weeks was the meeting of the Board of Supervisors last Friday and the meeting of the Council of Faculty Advisors immediately prior to that meeting the agenda of which was publicly posted and which was an open meeting. So the highlights of that meeting, you can see the agenda for yourself. Right, so we started the meeting and then Chairperson Rami Starnes and Chairperson-elect Valencia Williams came to chat with the committee, sort of just didn't really offer much other than answered a few questions about the athletics council and supervision of the athletics council. I did provide a chairperson's report, really the majority of which again will be in the minutes, but also just provide primarily updates on the LSU Baton Rouge campus. I also, all right, yeah, leave it at that. Then I reminded everyone essentially about the issue of the SCR6, which I was being informed of and given instructions even as I was reporting. Right. Sorry, I've lost the report. I'll have to refer to my minutes, but essentially, I just updated them pretty much on all things campus. I also told them that I testified before the legislature on SCR6, reminded them all that open meetings laws apply to all faculty senates in the system, and reminded them that training is available. They are very successful, the other campuses, at actually having meetings of all of their faculty on an annual basis. I certainly hope we will be able to move forward and make this a standard for us as well. And so, yeah, they all reported successful bit of that. I did remind them of PM 24, the Council of Faculty Advisors, that it's a 2-year term. It doesn't run concurrently with any elected office, and encourage them all to complete their elected terms. We're reminded of the state budget allowing for merit raises for faculty, and again emphasize that those are merit raises and not to be used otherwise. Reminded them of the Pentagon and Scholarship First agenda. There was some concern that I brought forward, at least from our faculty, that there was quite a bit of focus on STEM and some concern that there was less on the liberal arts and humanities. I reminded them that Roy Haggerty will be joining the university in August, so we're in a period of transition. and that Kathy Mumphrey was selected as the VP of Online and Distance Education. There are 3 candidates interviewing for inclusion civil rights in Title IX this week. I encourage them to participate online, given the distance that they would need to travel to attend personally. I also recommended to the committee that we endorse the staff Senate proposal and resolution that LSU employees receive LSU online tuition exemption and reduction for full-time LSU employees. All right, so there was pretty much a roundtable discussion, and then we composed the faculty report to the board, which is as follows. Again, touched upon the raises. We also brought forth that faculty annual evaluations are not held on all campuses, and this is completely unacceptable, and that the criteria for merit raises need to be shared with the faculty. We did report some issues with the Student Advocacy and Accountability Office, as well as the rather large number of closures of the Early Childhood Educational Laboratory. I did follow up and ask about the plans to change the Board of Supervisors bylaws and regulations, especially those that pertain to faculty, and I was met with abject silence.
I know, that was weird.
He just stared at me like he had no clue what I was talking about, so we moved on. Apparently, that's a done deal or otherwise. And then again, we endorsed the Faculty Senate resolutions for the tuition remission. Also announced that Dr. Sanjay Kamboj will take over as chair of the Council of Faculty Advisors, and that a new vice chair and secretary will be elected in the fall, at the first meeting of the fall. And I closed with that I was grateful for the Board of Supervisors reaching out to the faculty as they have for the first time in the history of the Faculty Senate over the last 3 years. All right, so moving back to, that's pretty much what we accomplished. Since then, there was some, as we've mentioned on the SCR6, there was some confusion over the language. But however, that was subsequently, I think, agreed upon by the General Counsel's office, that the selection was to be made by the LSU Faculty Senate presidents. So, but that was not informed, we were not informed until after the fact. So the council did elect Professor Christoph Stumpf from Alexandria as the representative for the LSU system. There was subsequently an election among the LSU Faculty Senate presidents, and they confirmed his election. I do want to put forth that there has been a rather shortage of our FSCC members at some of our interviews. This is very important. Remember that we are the envoy for our LSU. I can tell you there are a ton of meetings, especially during the school year, or during the academic year, sorry. I have been known to attend as many as 15-minute meetings in a week. So I ask that you respect your responsibility to be an envoy, and especially remember we are recruiting people here as much as they are, because they're interviewing us as much as we are interviewing them. All right, so I think that concludes my president's report. Any questions?
So I didn't get any emails about the interview, but I think there were some lunches also.
Yes, indeed.
I was not
I'm
invited.
so sorry. All right, Dr. Knoll, I'm not sure what is happening with.
I think I only came to know from Professor Tyrone recently that there was some.
He's not getting the emails, invitations for the candidate interview.
I'll ask about that. I don't control any of that.
No, I
But,
do.
okay.
I'm only.
Yeah, that's
It
weird.
does happen on occasion, and thank you for telling us.
Yeah.
There's
I'll
one
reach out.
tomorrow at 11:30.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm not here, so I would have, from next week I'll plan it.
Okay,
You can
thank
see
you for letting us
You
know.
can see the forum videos online
Sure.
in the circle.
And I was sent, I think he complained because he was getting, and I was sent a video and I looked at it. I will be following those.
Very good, thank you. All right, anything else?
Just on the matter of the faculty senate regulation changes, I followed up with Jason Drotty because there wasn't supporting information attached to the agenda that was posted for the Board of Supervisors meeting last Friday relating to the committee that was charged with bylaws revisions.
Yeah.
And he just told me that there were no current plans for any faculty senate changes. At the meeting, I went back and watched the meeting from Shreveport. That committee, the ad hoc committee, is charged with reviewing the bylaws. And so the faculty senate got looped in there, as our governance regulations are clearly in the bylaws and regulations. But I was told there was no immediate plans for any changes on that regard. So the fact that we were included was not a signal that there were immediate
They were
changes planned.
impending,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
So we just kind of got swept up, I think, in that ad hoc committee.
Yeah, well, he should have looked at me like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got.
Deer in headlights.
So, all right, thank you for that clarification. All right, anything else? All right, moving on, oh my goodness. Too many things. All right, first item on new business. Professor King.
I'm sorry.
Minutes,
We-
Oh, gosh.
minutes.
I do that every time, I am so sorry. All right, is there a motion to discuss the minutes from our last meeting June 9th? A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the minutes are open for discussion.
Yeah, I would like to move to amend the minutes to reflect that I raised the objection that COFA was not the appropriate venue for the appointment of the LSU system representative to the SCR task force. I noticed that got removed as we moved to revision 3 of the minutes.
Okay.
So if that could just be added back.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Anything else? So it was okay the first time? It was okay the
No,
first
no,
time?
it was omitted in the first iteration. It was included in version 1. See version 2, but when I checked version 3 this morning,
Okay.
it had been.
So can she cut and paste from,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
if you wanted to put the language back in
Yeah.
from version 1, plus whatever other additions were made since then, but yeah,
Revision.
revisions, revision 1, yeah, my apologies, yeah.
Version one,
Version- yeah.
revisions.
Yeah, of course, that was a mistake.
yeah,
No
I
worries.
think it was just an accidental deletion.
Sure.
All right, anything else on the minutes? All right, is there a motion to accept the minutes with the replacement of the language by Professor Jerome in the original revision? All right, and a second? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. All right, now, new business. Professor King?
Yeah, I was just wondering who you're meeting with, and how the meetings are going.
No meetings required.
No meetings recorded. Any of you guys have any information about that? About Vanessa meeting with the administrator?
Okay, moving on. Council faculty advisors representation, Professor Jerome.
Yeah, so I attended the Council of Faculty Advisors meeting last Friday, and then went back and reviewed PM 24 and realized we are out of accord with PM 24 because PM 24 requires that our representative be elected by the Senate. And I went through the old agendas and minutes that I could find, and I did not find a record of an election of a representative from main campus. So I just wanted to sort of raise it and point as something that we probably need to address to get that in compliance.
Agreed, yes, this has been an issue for many, many years. I was on the faculty senate for 10 years before I even knew of the Council of Faculty Advisors because that role was being filled without any consultation with the faculty senators at all. So yes, I have been filling the role. I'm in the second year of my second term. I do recommend that a protocol be established for electing a representative, probably at the same time that during the other elections in the spring.
Was there an election to install you for your first term, or for the first year of this term?
There has never been an election.
So can I move that we hold an election for the COFA representative, and then during the regular academic year, convene the Senate or raise its point of business for the Senate to establish the standing procedure for those elections?
Well, given that there hasn't been, so I don't know about that. Since there is no procedure in faculty senate, as I understand it, if we enact one now, it does not apply retroactively.
Right, but we don't have a representative that's been selected by this body.
I was selected as the others have before me. And if we change the protocol now, that's fine. I encourage you to do so. The others elect theirs separately from their faculty senate president. But up until now, we never have.
But I think what Dan is going to say is that you can get back to Representative Copa because you were faculty senate president.
Actually, I became the representative because I was the only one who showed up during the shutdown. So, yes.
So, hence, there were no elections, so you can self-appoint. I think that's what.
I am not self-appointing. I'm serving my term.
And who is our alternate?
We don't have one.
So,
I asked it.
yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at PM 24 that says members and alternates shall be elected for 2-year terms by the appropriate faculty senate or other faculty governing body of each campus in accordance with the rules and procedures established by that faculty governing body. So it seems like in order to be a legitimate representative to COFA, the person needs to be elected. I understand that that hasn't happened in the past, but now that we're aware of this, it seems that we should correct it.
But we have no protocol.
We have election, we can hold an election
But
right
we
now.
have no protocol.
We can have, we are the Senate.
You
Why-
can create a protocol now, yes.
So I move that we hold an election for COFA representative and alternate.
I don't think you can do that retroactively. And
But-
I don't see any point in it. I'll still be the immediate past chair.
Well, I mean, I guess the point is we're concerned that given the greater emphasis on adherence to our constitution and bylaws,
Agreed, and we don't have a protocol. We do not have a protocol. So we can create a protocol and hold the elections. And I encourage you to do that.
right, so we are out of order with PM 24.
I don't think we're out of order. Well, yes, I suppose we've been out of order for years. So create a protocol to correct it.
Just do it.
I move that our protocol for electing the representative to COFA be an election in the Senate.
I'm not sure what the motion is.
That the person to represent us on COFA be elected by the Senate. That's
Well, it
the,
already says in here that we have to do that. But the
That's already
logistics
there.
of it and steps for doing so. Like, when we do our elections, we have nominations a month before. We have, then we do the elections a month later, for officers. So we need some kind of procedure like that. Because it says in accordance with the rules and procedures established by that faculty governing body. So past few years, I guess our rule and procedure was the
Correct?
president became the person.
except that wasn't set down anywhere
Then-
either, right? So
She was, appointed for
I mean,
2 years.
I understand that we would like a more detailed protocol than what I just gave. But it seems to me that we are going to be closer in compliance with PM 24 if we have an elected representative rather than a representative who was not elected.
I was elected as the faculty senate president.
Yes, but the faculty
And that was
senate,
our procedure at the time.
is that written down somewhere?
It
You
has-
just said we don't have a protocol.
Well, just like most things that I inherited, it was traditional. I can't speak for that. I've spent the better part of the last few years following the rules.
So,
So the rule is you're elected for a 2-year term. That's all we've really got to go with. If you want to change the protocol, and I encourage you to do so, and to have a vice, an alternate, I think you should do that.
so what is the protocol?
It has to be determined.
No, I mean, but if we were, if is the protocol that the faculty senate president is the representative to COFA?
Yes.
then why isn't it necessary? No, because our rules govern the appointment, because it says in accordance with our rules. So if our custom is that our faculty senate president is our representative, then it is certainly entirely possible for us to decide that in the middle of a 2-year term, if there's a change in president, we change our representative. We don't have to be governed by rules of the
Well, I
board
think
and
you're
the
going back and forth between whichever rules
No,
are applying. So I am encouraging the others to finish out their terms. Anyone is welcome to attend, and I would encourage just Dr. Basayev to attend and to participate.
So just to be clear, if we were to bring a protocol to our next meeting that would establish a procedure for the election of our COFA representative and passed it, that would be sufficient.
For the
But she's
next.
in her term.
No, because we're out of order.
We're out of order.
We have-
You
we
were
have to get
never
ourselves back in
elected as
order.
COFA representative.
I guess I'm not familiar enough with Robert's rules or how the PMs apply forward or backward or sideways. Legal counsel, would you like to hide that?
Our reading of this, and this is convoluted, but our reading of this is that the absence of a rule, and there's no rule right now for the election of this individual. The procedure has been, I guess, since when Professor Koch was doing this, it was just that was the case. And so the problem is, reading the rule here, members elected for 2-year terms by the Senate or governing body in accordance with the rules and procedures established by the faculty. Even though it's practice, the procedure to date has been that the president is that person. The problem is they're a 2-year term now.
Right.
And so obviating the 2-year term when that has been the practice, that's the problem in my mind. And
I mean,
it's certainly appropriate to put procedures in place. I hope you do.
yeah, no, I mean, I certainly understand the incompatibility here, because if it were just a 1-year term, there would be no inconsistency.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like if the PM allows for a 2-year term, but then says that the individual is determined by our rules, then in the absence of our rules, if our custom has been that our president is our representative, then that should supersede the 2-year term, because there was never a separate election for a representative explicitly to a 2-year term. That was an extension of the presidential election, but never specifically stated or codified.
I hear you. And if it weren't for the 2-year term, then we wouldn't even be batting this around. The
When-
fact that there's a 2-year term is what makes this hard. Because what we're doing, there's also provisions in here for removing someone in the middle of a term.
Mhm.
So if the term, even though it was by practice and by tradition or whatever, the rule was in place,
Before,
she's still in the middle of a term, and that's
Yeah.
what's frustrating. Is right now we'd have to remove if that term has any legitimacy at all.
But the initial appointment was illegitimate, in the sense that there was never an election, there was an
No.
appointment.
Well, if it was,
it was the
if it was-
process of the committee or the Senate that.
I had nothing to do with any of it.
No, I understand. No, you're sort of getting caught up with it.
The way I'm reading it is it says election, but by the rules and procedures of the Senate. And the only way that you can read this in past practice is election by the procedure of the Senate. And the procedure had been to usher that person into that position. And the anomaly of the 1-year term versus the 2-year term is a problem.
No, I know, it's just our constitution and bylaws are silent on the question of COFA, right? So there was no way for anyone to understand that the election of the president was by extension the election of the COFA representative, right? Which would then require sort of if there was a separate election for a COFA representative explicitly due to a 2-year term, then I would say, okay, that person has a 2-year term.
And
But-
if we're gonna extend by tradition practice here, we've never had 2 different people on COFA and as Senate president. It's always been the same person. If you wanna go by old practices.
It has been, and the argument would be a little more compelling if the person sitting on COFA had to be an officer of the faculty senate, but they can be any faculty
That would be
member.
anybody.
And so that's what also makes it a little bit harder. So I hear what y'all are saying, and it's certainly not an unreasonable take on it. The interpretation out of necessity that I think that we find ourselves at is that for years, this is the way it's been done, and here we are without a protocol in place. And if we were to remove somebody, there is a defined protocol for removing somebody. The other thing is not very defined. Our internal LSU faculty senate rule for COFA nomination is not defined.
So which rule takes precedence? Is it the PM or is it our rules?
I'd say the PM takes precedent in that case.
Over our rules?
Yeah, because that's a system-wide directive.
Right, but the PM delegates the authority to make the choice to the Senate. right? I mean, so because it says the rules by which the individual will be selected are determined by the body that selects them, then that they will be representing. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is if we were to establish a procedure by which, if we had a midterm election, for whatever reason, that falls outside of the parameters by which someone may be removed from COFA, and specifically elucidated in the PM, would that be sufficient for us then to send a new representative from the faculty senate?
Well, with the rules fairly limited on removal, that's what makes it hard, and you don't have but one representative. And so you've got somebody sitting in a term right now, and specific criteria for removal. So that's what makes that hard.
What's the removal?
Yeah, where are those?
It's in the
It's in the PM.
if the.
Well, it says if they
part two.
retire, they take an administrative job, then they have to step down, but it doesn't say what steps may be taken by the board to remove them.
So it doesn't allow for just, for lack of a better word, impeachment or removal.
Well, it's not impeachment. I mean, I guess it's just, we've never had an election. The term here is election. An election is more legitimate than custom. And so if we were to create an election, which is actually more consistent with the PM, right? I mean, because I guess what I'm saying is.
Prospectively, no question. It's the retroactive part.
Right.
Because the term is there, and it's, even by practice, it's been ratified for a year. And I understand that no one really understood the machinations of it, but that's kind of where we are. That's just how I read it. I mean, without preference to one side or the other on this, that's the way that I read this. We find ourselves pigeonholed with somebody sitting in a term and limited ways to remove that person from the term. So they got there informally through this procedure, this back-end procedure that's been happening all these years. So that's just my take on it. That's just one person's take on it.
No, I understand. I mean, I guess it just seems odd that we lose control over our own representative on the seat, right? I mean, because they are our representative. And now it's been told, well, they're the only one who was there, so they're going to represent you. And then we're going to say, oh, wait a minute, this says we had to have an election. And just because we didn't know, now we're being told, well, your ignorance is now binding for another year because the PM says that.
Well, it's likely if the Senate had been consulted about this, that they probably would have elected the president to be the representative anyway. So it's, let's get on to something else.
This is important. I mean, it's
I mean, this is you can have an election when the Senate gets back in place for the next term after her term.
All right, anything else on that? All right, investiture of newly elected officers. Professor Rowland.
Yeah, so I think as many people in the room know, when the Constitution was up for ratification, and I went through it last spring, among the things that I noted that I thought needed to be nailed down or amended in certain ways was this question about when over the summer officers actually assume their positions, assume the responsibilities of their position. And so I've off and on been kind of looking at this, and it turns out that Robert's Rules actually has something for us on this, because our Constitution and bylaws are completely silent on when newly elected officers assume their responsibilities. So I want to read you the section. This is section 46. Entitled Time at Which an Election Takes Effect. An election to an office becomes final immediately if the candidate is present and does not decline, or if he is absent but has consented to his candidacy. If he is absent and has not consented to his candidacy, the election becomes final when he is notified of his election, provided he does not immediately decline. If he does decline, the election is incomplete, and another vote can be taken immediately or at the next meeting without further notice. After an election has become final, as stated in this paragraph, it is too late to reconsider the vote on the election. And now this is the part that's important to us. An officer-elect takes possession of his office immediately upon his elections becoming final, unless the bylaws or other rules specify a later time. If a formal installation ceremony is prescribed, failure to hold it does not affect the time at which the new officers assume office. So, since our bylaws, and neither our bylaws nor our Constitution actually specify when newly elected officers assume their responsibilities. And we are a body, we the Senate, are a body governed by Robert's rules. It appears to me as if newly elected officers assume their responsibilities upon completion of their election, which for us would have been April 23rd or whatever it was. It's the April meeting when the election is held.
We don't have our Constitution expert here.
We have the Constitution,
And
probably 3 copies.
so I will need to go through it because,
Well, this is something that I noted in my amendments and we spoke about in the spring. I had proposed something. I mean, I first noted it in my comments and we spoke about all of these, a couple of times. I then supplemented the comments with amendments to take to the faculty council meeting, and I came up with something that I proposed in there. But it's never been a question as to whether or not the Constitution and bylaws are silent on this. I mean, we can go through it. I've got a copy of the 2005 Constitution, which is what we're current on, as well as the current bylaws. And I've been over them a number of times. And there's just nothing. This is why there was this confusion that I raised earlier in the summer, maybe even last spring, about exactly when my term expires. Because no one has been elected to replace me. No one will be elected to replace me until the first meeting of the semester. This is kind of a piece with the lack of specificity or just really anything at all, other than saying that all members of both FSECs, old and newly elected, serve over the summer. That's the only thing. It says there's nothing whatsoever about when officers assume their roles.
all right. I'll need to, I know, I am fairly confident that it's somewhere, though I'm not disputing what you're saying. I've not personally tackled this previously, as we've always understood it or found it to be the first day of the fall semester. But I don't at this point have anything to contradict or otherwise what you're saying. I'm looking through quickly. This is really pointless because I'm not going to be able to find it. So we can certainly go back through the records and find where it is. I've been assured that it does exist. I can't find it either. So,
Maybe it's Article 6, is where we talk about, this is the Constitution, where it talks about service over the summer, right, from the end of the spring semester to the first fall class
Sure.
day. There's, elections in our bylaws is in section 6 as well. Elections of officers will be elected, and it outlines the process of election.
Yeah, it says from the end of the spring semester to the first fall class day, the executive committee will consist of the current year members and the elected members for the next academic year.
Right.
Next academic year. All members of the executive committee have voting privileges during this period. So they were elected for the next academic year. The next academic year starts in August.
Yeah, but it's 1 year term. So that doesn't say they go in at the beginning of the year because there's an incompatibility between the term of office and the academic year. And so it could be that they're,
So they
The
begin in the
elected
academic
members
year,
for the next academic year.
and
Right.
they serve until the beginning
Of the next academic year.
that's not stated. Because it could be that you are in office in the summer preceding the academic year through the following academic year.
Which is
And then the
what it
new
says.
team takes over at the beginning of the following summer for the preceding, or for the following academic year. So that does not determine when officers actually take office.
Says
Okay.
the elected members for the next academic year.
Right.
So
But that
elected members are for the next academic year, not the
But-
current.
But if they go into office in April, they go into office the first day of the fall term, they will still be officers in charge during the next academic year.
Yeah, in charge the next academic year.
Right, whether they're in April
Not
or they're
during
in
the summer.
August, or they're in August.
Yeah,
It
you're-
begins on the first day of the fall semester, the next academic
But
year.
all elected people and the previous elected people are all working together in the summer on everything. That's how it's set up.
Well, we got that part is specified. What's not specified, Pache, what you're saying here is when the officers assume their roles. Because Dan is right, if the
The next
officers,
academic year.
if the officers assume their roles, in, let's say on the first day of summer, then they will still be, serving for the entire, following academic year.
So what's the problem?
Well, the problem is that that's observationally indistinguishable from, I mean, it doesn't preclude someone from serving for the next academic year if you take office in April or you do in August. And so we can't use that to determine when the bylaws actually state someone assumes office. And in the absence of a specified date, our constitution and bylaws say that we have to revert back to Robert's rules. And Robert's rules is very clear that as soon as the election is complete, and the election is complete as soon as the individual has been notified they've been elected and they have accepted and they've agreed to serve, the election is complete, and in the absence of anything in the constitution and bylaws that state otherwise, then that individual assumes office.
Interesting to see what the US Constitution says.
Well, it's very, I mean, I think we're all familiar with sort of January 6th. There's a very clear dates upon which these processes play
This is
out.
probably something that needs, in the revision of the Constitution, needs to be addressed. In my historical perspective, having served on the faculty senate for many years, it is my understanding that the people who wrote the Constitution expected it to go from academic year to academic year. I queried Bill Daley about this, one of the original authors of that previously, and that has always been the understanding. I agree that the language probably needs to be clarified, and I encourage you to do that in the next
Number 3
revision of
is
the
very
Constitution.
clear in Article 6. It says, from the end of the spring semester to the first fall class day, the executive committee will consist of the current members and the elected members for the next academic year.
That's not fair.
That's-
All
It's not-
members of the executive committee
Okay.
shall vote.
Okay, I
Move on to the actual-
I raise a point of order that I am concerned that we are out of order with our constitution and bylaws by not having executed the transition
Number 3.
for the officers following the April elections as stated in Robert's
Number
rules.
3 in Article 6.
And so I would ask for a decision from the chair on that.
I sent it to them.
Do you have, I defer to general counsel.
Well, Dr. Torrin had written Winston about this a little bit earlier, and I saw his response. Did you see his response?
I did.
Okay. His take on it was that I can't remember which one, I'm trying to find the provision in here, because I'm playing with catch up. That it does say that the president or those officers serve for a year.
No, I agree. No one's contesting the year. I mean, it's just, is the year April to April or is it August to August?
No, I hear you, and
Yeah.
I'm all for clarity. I
Sure.
don't like terms like academic years, those change too
Yeah.
much. But if we usurp that with the current election, the current president and officers would be serving less than a full year.
Well, no, not necessarily, because they began acting as if they were in office the first day of the fall term, but there's nothing to say they were not invested in that office in April.
They were invested in if we went this way, they would be invested in the office upon completion of the election, which happened in April, then they would serve until next April. That would be their 1 year.
I don't know if they were or not. Yeah, you always have to say.
Well, it says it right here.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is we have no official investiture date or even proceedings. And there's no minutes from the faculty senate executive committee meetings last year, so far as I'm aware, where we can go back in and refer back to that either.
I keep going back to the Constitution where it says from the end of the spring semester to the first fall class day. The executive committee consists of the current year members and the elected members for the next academic year.
That just means the members who will be serving in those positions
The
during
next
the
academic year.
next academic year. It
Correct.
doesn't say when they start. They are the people who will be serving in those roles during the next academic year. But that's entirely silent on when they begin those roles.
I'm sorry,
the next academic year.
there is a point of order on the floor, and
It looks like it's
we need a
clear
ruling from the
understanding
chair.
that they start on the first day of the fall semester.
It-
I mean,
Next
it
academic
just
year.
looks clear.
If
It's
it were
very
that,
clear in
if it
the
were that
Constitution.
clear,
Yeah.
he would have said,
No, I just don't
So
know.
what
I
are
don't
you
know
trying,
from practice
what
where
are you
you
trying
all
to do?
actually do those
Are you
things.
trying to change it to April now?
Yeah, you're trying to
Or are
get
you
rid of the
gonna-
old
or do you wanna keep
elected
the
people.
first of the fall?
So that they have
I'm-
to work during the summer.
I am suggesting we are out of compliance with,
We're not.
Well, that is actually,
That's
sorry,
actually to be
that is
decided
for,
by
that
the
is for the
body.
chair to decide, so I'd like the chair to issue a ruling on the point of order.
I'm going based on the last 15 years of observations I have, of my observations, and that has that the new terms begin with the first day of the fall semester. However, I am absolutely in agreement that an investiture date should be added to the Constitution on the next revision. And I will leave that to the leadership that is coming up.
I appeal from the decision of the chair.
my second,
Well, my interpretation of the Constitution is that it begins the 1st of August.
Okay, we have a guest in the room that, in some very important matters. I understand there's an appeal on the table and so on, appeal on the floor. I would like, however, I would like, however, to move forward with our
no,
agenda.
I'm sorry. I'm
The
sorry.
ruling has already been made.
No,
No,
it's
the
been
ruling
appealed.
has been made and been
You
appealed. There
just
is-
appealed,
And I seconded the appeal.
and I just made
No,
the
that's
ruling
not-
as the,
The appeal goes to a vote.
The appeal goes to a
The
vote.
what's the appeal gonna
The
do?
appeal from the decision of the chair is that the votes determine, that the chair's determination that we are in compliance with our constitution and bylaws and not transitioning to the new officers as stipulated by Robert's rules following the election is in order. So the question before the body is that a correct decision? So a vote in favor affirms the chair's decision, a vote against is to say that we are in fact not in compliance.
Can you vote on the chair's decision?
I'm a member of the body.
No, it's Robert's rules.
I'm sorry.
Robert's rules.
Can I do what? Is what you're asking?
He-
He's appeal a ruling by
Right,
the chair.
right.
And now they're saying they want to vote on the
Well,
decision of the chair.
That's the way an appeal from the ruling of the chair works.
What?
Under Robert's rules, that's accurate.
Yeah.
An appeal of a chair's decision on point of order goes to the body. For vote.
Okay,
So we need a vote.
So what are we voting on?
So the vote is that the decision of the chair that we are currently in compliance with the Constitution and bylaws and Robert's rules by not transitioning from the newly elected members at the end of the April meeting, but instead to the beginning of the first day of the fall term is consistent. A vote in favor confirms the chair's decision. A vote against says, in fact, we are out of order by not conducting the transition at the end of the April meeting.
You get that?
Yeah. I completely disagree, because our Constitution overrules Robert's rules, and the Constitution clearly states.
It
when
does
the
not
term starts.
clearly state that.
Yes.
There-
It's implied clearly
It's
that
not.
it starts August,
It's not.
the first fall semester.
Should we call the question?
Well, I have a question. I think that the Constitution should have said clearly somewhere what is the starting date. And with all due respect to President Lopez, but I think relying on just 15 years of interpretation is not a valid excuse.
I'm relying on the Constitution.
We had 15 years to fix this issue, and we didn't pay any attention to that.
And frankly, it doesn't have to go to the Constitution, it can go to the bylaws. In fact, Robert's rules specifically refer to the bylaws as identifying the date at the beginning of the term. And that is completely within our control and does not require a vote of the faculty council.
So whoever,
I call the question.
yeah,
Yeah.
second.
all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
I'm calling the question.
Yes.
In favor of calling the question.
Mhm.
I don't know what I vote on.
Well, right now we're just voting to call the question, which ends to moves to the vote on the appeal. So,
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay?
All right, the question is called, the vote moves forward. Restate the motion, please.
well, so the appeal from the chair is that the determination that we are currently in compliance with the Constitution, bylaws, and Robert's rules, by not transitioning to the newly elected officers at the end of the April meeting where the elections were ended, we are still in compliance with the Constitution, bylaws, and Robert's rules. A vote in favor confirms the chair's determination because the chair determined that we are currently in accordance with that. A vote against is a vote against the chair's determination that we are in accordance and argues that in fact we are out of order because we did not conduct it in accordance with the stipulations in Robert's rules.
I think there's already a second on the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. I don't think anyone knows what we're voting on right now. And
So a vote in favor agrees with Mandy's ruling. A vote against does not agree with Mandy's ruling.
I agree with Mandy's ruling.
I abstain.
okay, all those against?
Aye.
Nay.
All right.
So that means you have to leave, I have to leave, she has to leave, and he has to leave.
No, it just
No.
means we're in non-compliance.
Because we're all still
Yeah.
serving as FSEC. The only thing that should change if we want to become in compliance is that the newly elected officers should assume the responsibilities of those offices.
I believe the vote, however, is just that we are in non-compliance.
Yeah.
All right, can we move on with our agenda, please? All right, Dean Common, thank you for joining us.
How you do this except the insurrection.
All right,
That's where you are.
Do you want to move on or not?
okay, please direct your comments to me
You wanna
as
get
the
that way?
chair. All right. Dean Common, thank you for being here.
January
and
6th.
Welcome to our meeting. Please step up if you'd like. We're grateful for your presence.
Yes.
All right, so we'll put a pause on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjust the agenda so that we can accommodate Dean Common's time, please? We are already 17 minutes
So moved.
over. A second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you for being here. We've asked you here to update us on the SAA, Student Advocacy and Accountability procedures and actions. And I know we've been had a tiny pandemic and other interruptions during your time here. Nonetheless, some concerns have been brought to the attention of this body, and that is related to, and I'll just state it clearly, some differences in consequences for what are believed to be the same violations. So, and we cannot and will not disclose anything about the cases or any specifics of them whatsoever. But nonetheless, this is a concern. So I think we've asked you here to explain the process and how these potential differences in consequences might come to be.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time. So I'll hop straight into it. The document that you received, this is a flow chart of our conduct process as it stands right now. So to go very briefly, I won't read it word for word, but I'll tell you what happens. So a report, the Student Advocacy and Accountability Office receives a report. And that report can come from another student, it can come from a faculty member in the case of academic misconduct, or it can come from a staff member in other cases. There's Life, LSUPD, a lot of different entities. So they receive the report. The report is usually vetted through our Associate Dean of Students. And the determination is made that there's enough information in the report to move on and make it into a case. So at that time, whether it be an academic misconduct or behavioral misconduct case, we have several different staff members who have been trained, who we call hearing officers, and the cases are assigned to them. And so we do have two hearing officers in particular who are the first individuals to normally work with our academic misconduct cases. They read the report, we reach out to the individual, the student, and we invite the student to come in and have a conversation about whatever information that we receive. Oftentimes in academic misconduct cases, if it's a paper, there's usually like a turnitin.com, wherever those systems are, and we'll have copies of the different assignments. It's really whatever the faculty member submits is what we work from. And the faculty member then becomes the primary witness or the person who is bringing up the case. At that time, a conversation is had and a determination is made. We share with our students that we go off preponderance of evidence. And so if it is more likely than not that we believe that they are in violation of our code of student conduct, then we will find them in violation. And oftentimes when it comes to academic misconduct cases, it might be copying, it might be plagiarism, it might be working together in groups in a way that they weren't supposed to, depending on whatever the faculty member brings up. We make a determination, and so the first decision is made by the hearing officer. And that's normally in a one-on-one setting. The students receive an outcome letter that states this is what we either found you responsible for or not. And very important, when it comes to academic misconduct cases, it is our normal process that we'll try to reach out and let the faculty member know as we are letting the student know about the outcome, just so that the faculty member can be made aware of the situation. So the student is made aware, and at that time, they have an opportunity to either accept whatever outcome that may be, or to not accept it and choose to go to a separate hearing with our university hearing panel. All of our university hearing panels must have at least one faculty member and one student on each panel, but there also must be 3 individuals. So theoretically, you could have 2 faculty and 1 student, 1 faculty, 2 students, but typically we like to have a student rep, a faculty rep, and a staff rep. But you do not need a staff rep to necessarily meet the criteria to have a UHP. At that time, the student is given the opportunity to bring up whatever information they feel they need to in order to show their innocence, so to speak, or show that they didn't violate our code of student conduct. Typically, the university, the official who made the first outcome, is the person presenting the case for the university. But we will, in many cases, ask the faculty member to also attend a university hearing panel and state why they believe that the student violated our academic misconduct policies. The university hearing panel has the opportunity to ask questions of the student, to ask questions of the original hearing officer who heard the case, to ask questions of the faculty member. Final kind of comments are made, the closing remarks, so to speak, and then the university hearing panel, they make a decision. Very important, they are not made aware of any prior academic misconduct cases brought against the student prior to making their decision. After they make their decision of violation or not violation, then that information is shared with them that the student has a conduct case. At that time, we do have certain criteria when it comes to academic misconduct cases. There are certain violations or outcomes that can be given to a student depending on the situation. And so the university hearing panel, they make that determination, and there is an SAA rep, we call it the Student Advocacy and Accountability Rep. Their purpose in the hearing is to make sure procedurally we follow what we need to follow. They also sit in the room when deliberations are happening for the university hearing panel. They're not a voting person, but they're making sure that the university hearing panel is having the appropriate conversation to make sure that we're being fair for our students. After determination is made, a rationale is determined as to why they made the decision they made. Students receive the outcome. If students don't like that outcome, they can appeal. Their final appeal comes to me. And so I'm in no part of the process prior to this point, but at that point in time, they can appeal on grounds that they felt like there was bias on the part of one of the university hearing panelists. They can appeal on the fact that there's new evidence that didn't exist or wasn't able to be shared at the time of the hearing that may impact the hearing decision. They can appeal on the grounds that the outcome doesn't necessarily match like the violation. So if a student were found in violation for copying, for example, the university hearing panel decided to suspend them. They can say, this is way too harsh for this, and they can appeal on those grounds. And then they can also appeal on procedural error, that we didn't do something that we were supposed to do at any point in the process that they feel like was detrimental to their ability to be able to fully defend their case. That comes to me, I make that determination, and then that ends the process. So that's the process.
Okay.
And so we being Dr. Jeremiah Shin and myself, we came to this group maybe 3 or 4 months
It was
ago.
in January.
January, okay. And I know there were some issues, there were a couple of things that were discussed that I don't have a lot of updates on because we have not at this time had the opportunity to go through another round of code of conduct revisions. And so some of the things that were addressed, and I know we talked about a particular case at that time where there was questioning by faculty as to how does the university hearing panel arrive to the rationale for their decisions. And to give you an example, some of the decisions they could make, they could reduce the students' grade by letter grade. They have that authority. They have the authority to give the student 0 on that exam. They have the authority to give the student reduce their grade by like a letter grade on the exam. There's a lot of different outcomes that the UHP can determine. I know we had a situation in particular where the faculty member felt as though disagreed with the outcome, and disagreed because for this particular situation, it involved graduation. And the student was able to graduate and the faculty member didn't necessarily agree with that. And so what we talked about, well, didn't not agree with graduation, but the outcome. If the outcome would have gone in the way, had the outcome been more harsh, the student wouldn't have graduated. The outcome wasn't as punitive, and so the student was able to graduate. A few things that we talked about before is oftentimes we challenge the university hearing panel to think about mitigating factors and aggregating factors when it comes to their decision making. And so it's not just what happened, it's about the totality of the case and what other things, if any, were at play that ultimately impact the decision or ultimately impacted what happened. That oftentimes goes into the case of the outcomes as well. They do, and they have been at this point in time, given the liberty to take into account the overall academic grade for the student in a particular course. And so that is something that we discussed. And I know that there were some issues with that in terms of the leeway and the amount of kind of authority that the university hearing panel is given in order to make those decisions around reducing a letter grade or taking, 10% off of an exam or a paper or whatever the case may be. We definitely have those notes, and that's going to be top of order when we go through our next round of code revisions. That normally happens, or I can't even say normally because looking back at the records, it's been 4 years, and then it'll happen in 8 more years, and then 2 more years. Currently, we're on the cycle that we'd like to revisit more consistently. We'd like to have it at least in that 2-year range. I arrived here in December of 20, and Trey can correct me, we were just about finishing at that time. I think I came to the very last meeting of the Code of Conduct Revision Committee.
Yeah,
And so those,
it was toward the end.
yes, it was toward the end, and they officially went into effect, I believe, maybe sometime last January? No, it wasn't last January, it was this January. It would have been at the beginning of this semester, so January of 2022.
2012, yeah.
And so what I can tell you right now is that we are beginning to talk about and think about compiling a group to begin that process of looking at our code again. And this will be visited. According to the Code of Conduct, we have to have 3 faculty members, 3 staff members, 3 students. So faculty representation is there. And I do encourage, and I will be chairing that committee. I welcome faculty to be in that space and to have those conversations, and we can come to a determination at that point in time. Another small thing, but I think it made a big difference for the faculty who were in the room at that time, was in our charge letters that we send out to the students to notify them that they have been accused of an academic misconduct case. There was some, I believe you brought it up, maybe. The idea that we need to be more explicit to our students that it is a job of faculty to report academic misconduct. It is not their place to reach out to the faculty member at any point during the time of the case. And so we have changed that language
Okay,
in our
yeah.
charge letters to make sure to tell them, don't talk to the faculty member. They're doing their job. And if we are made aware that they have been, that can also play a factor as it plays out with their situation.
I believe that was Professor McMillan
Okay,
that
okay.
brought that up, yeah. Okay, so I thank you very much for that explanation, and that's very helpful, and as you may or may not know, I've served on SAA panels for probably the last 10 years, if not more. So, I don't know, has anyone else in this room served on those?
And we welcome more panelists, so if you want to.
So I think faculty should be serving on these. And it's extremely important that we have our representation. Otherwise, they have to rely very heavily on faculty. And there's also a shortage of faculty who can serve as chairs. So there is training and an expectation that you will make yourself available to assist with this process. All right, that said, I think the issue still comes down to, if, for instance, there is a violation and there is an impending graduation versus someone who's in the second year, this seems to be taking or otherwise swaying the decision of the committee. Is this possible? I mean, is it more lenient if you are facing not graduating versus not progressing to your next course in your curriculum?
That's a good question. What I can tell you is that is not something that we communicate to the UHB. And, but at the same time, I can't definitively say that doesn't play a factor. I haven't seen a rationale written that specifically says, we knew you were graduating, so therefore we didn't do that.
Yes.
But we do expect that rationales are given for decisions and why they are made. But it is up to the discretion of the UHP. And so we even tell students, we've had academic misconduct cases that involve multiple students. Typically, whether it be behavioral or academic, if it's a case that's together, we like to hear it together because it makes more sense. You get the totality of the story. However, students can opt into having an individual case. We tell students, if you have an individual case, theoretically for the same thing, you have a different university hearing panel, which means you can get a different outcome. And it really just depends on the individuals. And so to your point, that has not been shared. We do not say, if they're graduating, be more lenient.
No, obviously
but-
not, yes.
Yeah, and I did ask Jonathan after our last meeting, does the data show, based on what he could find, it's difficult to parse out in that way, more or less than going specifically into the case, because
Sure, yeah.
our system doesn't cut it like the data in that way to necessarily know. But based on his understanding, that would have to be the three individuals in that space at that time, taking that into account, and not something that's written into our policies.
So, well, our goal here was not to put you on the defensive at all. I think really what we're trying to see is going forward, and again, I've served on many panels, and some of them are kind of tricky, absolutely, and especially getting everyone to come to a consensus. But I guess what we're looking for is, and you've already mentioned that you're going to start revisiting the Student Code of Conduct and presumably the SAA policies and procedures. But how can you inform this body of any changes that you might make to avoid any sort of leniency for one situation versus another?
Well, I guess my question for you, and I hope that this helps to answer your question.
Yeah.
Typically, those three faculty members, do we reach out to this body to ask for representation? Because ideally, if someone in this space were to be there,
On the review.
then on the review committee.
I volunteered last meeting when we talked to you.
So, but is there a place, I don't know, and Trey, you may even know, I don't know if it's very in the code, it just says 3 faculty members, 3 staff members.
Understood.
And so,
Yeah, my recommendation, and this has certainly occurred before in prior leadership, and that is to go before the faculty senate and ask, as you've heard, we're in a period of a transition in leadership, but certainly the faculty senators are the representatives, they are the elected representatives of their faculty, and we do encourage them to participate in all things over which faculty have governance, including deciding educational policy, of which this is certainly part of that purview. So I personally, but anyone at the table can certainly speak to that. Where do you recommend, Dean Carling, go for volunteers to serve on this committee?
Can I ask a question about let's say a student was not allowed to graduate. So what's the future outcome of that? I mean, is it considered a serious enough matter so they would never graduate, or just they have to take a course over again and stay another semester?
they would have to take a course, I believe in one of the example situations, it would have been having to take a course again. Because they don't have the authority, the University Hearing Panel, they're only focusing on that class.
Yeah,
And they're really only focusing on that
that
assignment.
grade.
So really, it's about, they would have had to, like, in a situation where they were being more lenient, they would have had to have known, if we give a D versus a C on this exam, it will cause the student to then fail the class and then have to take it over. And oftentimes, I'm not sure if they know that level of information
Well,
outside of students sharing.
I can tell you the student does share that.
Because they want to appeal to the
They,
heartstrings and
absolutely,
university hearing.
because the student is given the opportunity to present any mitigating factors, and I can assure you
Yeah.
that comes up.
They
Yeah,
go back
it
to
is.
their advisor and they say, this is happening to me. You know?
Yes.
Is there a time, I mean, as a president of the faculty senate, I'm wondering if you could make some tool available on your website where it's interactive, where you can actually, without students' names or anything like that, just by their college, department, and the violation, whatever you want to call it, and what year they were in and what was, just as a data point for, I had several faculty members this past year share with me stories of, egregious leniency on students who were graduating, and it was very clear that they were being given lenient rulings, if you will, because they were going to graduate, and it was going to, quite frankly, affect the, retention and graduation rates for the university. So for the sake of transparency, I think it would be really important for faculty and for LSU community to have access to that kind of information. How many students and what are the violations, let's say cheating on an exam, that's a very common, or plagiarism, that's a very common offense, and what were the outcomes? Without any, completely anonymized, you don't have to give names, obviously it's not the wall of shame, but just as a data point, because, faculty are sometimes left in the dark, not me personally, just, again, what I hear what's on the street, so to speak. And we just want to make sure that there are very strict protocols on this so that we don't get on anybody's radar as, LSU just looks the other way because student is graduating. It's a thing. So you're a senior, please go ahead and cheat all you want. Just to put it bluntly.
Oh, that's a narrative
Yeah.
that students kind of know.
No, it was almost suggested to me as that,
Yeah.
it's okay, cheat here and there, you'll get out of, you'll get out of jail free, that kind of thing.
Do you fill out reports like that?
We do have an annual report that does show aggregate data on different violations. And so I couldn't tell you the outcomes based on how we've previously made these annual reports, but we can tell you how many academic violations, how many academic misconduct, how many behavior misconduct. And I do know that we could pull that information by college as well.
Oh, that's
I
great.
would need to ask, do we have the mechanisms in place to just kind of get a broad understanding of the general outcomes? I guess my other question, and I left our last meeting with this question of the faculty voice in those spaces, because like I mentioned, we have to have a faculty member. And so I'm wondering, and that's why I think it's important just to get more faculty in this process. Because
Yes,
the faculty we look to the faculty when it comes to that first hearing our staff look to the faculty because oftentimes, especially for very specific majors where it's like this one thing was different, they will call the faculty members and they should be. They should say like, help me understand so I can better understand what I'm even looking at sometimes to make those determinations. And then I know they also tend to look to the faculty when it comes to the academic misconduct cases going to UHB, because you have a faculty member in that space who should be able to, and I know different disciplines, totally different, ways of doing things across the university, but there's that commonality of this faculty and being able to digest this information in a meaningful way. But I like that idea, and I take a note down.
So you can add outcomes to your report.
I will have to ask how that would work.
You have to be very careful, too, so there's FERPA
Yeah,
laws
yeah.
that.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be like a
It
general
would just be
outcome,
like a
repeat
general-
course, grade change,
Oh,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
That's
Oh,
right.
absolutely.
I agree with that,
Exactly,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not bound to get
Oh, yeah,
with
of course,
yeah, yeah.
anyway.
Just
It's
something general is what.
just a general, just data point, yeah.
If you could collate it by year, that would be really helpful, because then you could look at trends.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a more lenient disposition to that case if they're in their fourth year, presumably closer to graduation? So if we just have that separated out, right, it'll be harder on freshmen and sophomores and juniors and
And
seniors.
if they were delayed in graduation, that would be
Yeah.
important to know.
Yeah, sorry, you're a student, not calendar year.
So anecdotally, I understand, and this is not the first time I've heard it. And I've bumped into, right, if you serve on those panels long enough, you see it a lot. But, that those who were scheduled to graduate were going to graduate regardless of the outcome. And this is not the first time I've heard that. And I really have strong opposition to that. Now, I cannot, we're not gonna share any specific details. I understand that. We're not gonna go into dig into the devil is in the details, but that's not the point. What we want to do is make sure that just because there's an impending graduation, if you've broken the student code of conduct, well, that's a personal choice, right? You made that choice, and there are consequences for that.
Yes.
So, again, just want to go on the record, putting this out there, that this anecdotally, and this is not the first time I've heard it.
Yeah, and I completely concur with what.
So can I ask a related question? The issue is also about the grad students, so the grad students, especially the international students, have a cutoff requirement for their GPA. If they fall below that during their studies, their visa is kicked out. They have to leave the country. So how many in your these cases, what is the percentage of grad students versus undergrads? And are grad students more, do you find them more disciplined in some sense, or less, aren't they, depending also on different nationalities and so on?
I wouldn't know the nationality piece. What I can tell you is that I feel fairly confident, but I would have to look at the data to make sure that a large amount of our academic misconduct cases come from the undergraduate group. And we've been trying to focus on how we can provide even more education to faculty members and help them to think about the language and how they can share with students what their process will look like, because what I've been told the past several semesters, at the end of the semester, there's normally a handful of faculty that account for well over 50 to 60% of the cases out of certain classes. They're just we'll get 30 or 40 from this class, and then another 30 or 40 from this class. But generally, I don't feel like graduate students, they're not the lion's share of the cases that come through. But it also could be the case that graduate students don't go throughout the entire process as well, because you have to, in some cases, determinations are made. And I did speak to a graduate student this past year who, he's like a fifth or sixth year. He was almost finished with his dissertation. And he just did the math and was like, okay, whatever they gave me doesn't really matter at this point. He felt like he didn't do it, but he also knew that the outcome didn't really matter for his potential future outcomes, and so he just went ahead and took it. And he gave me some feedback, really just about how the meeting went, and he had some he just wanted to pass it along to me. So that may happen as well. But I can definitely look at that information.
So I had a personal case, like I was teaching a graduate course,
Mhm.
and in my department of physics, like for the first 2 years, they are very intensive courses being done by both domestic and international students. I had a case where in many of the grad courses, they have to write a paper or something like that, a project report.
Mhm.
These are senior grad courses, and their GPA should not fall below I think something like 3.2 or something, or they are in trouble visa wise.
Right.
So this guy, he just copied and pasted a lot of material, and I had access to authenticate. So I had a suspicion about this student. I ran the report, and about 45 to 50% of the thing was copied. So I reported, and I think the only thing was that he was put on some sort of. First of all, I had to face some opposition from some people in the department itself. Well, you really want to do this because this student may be.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's coming back to the same thing,
Didn't know.
the graduation thing or so on. The grad students also have that soft spot. It's not only whether you graduate, but I'm going to be kicked out if you report. So
Yeah.
I think I think the solution is that we should make it very strict. We should give the warning on the website very strictly, whether you are undergrad or grad, whether you are on visa or not. If you do this, you are in serious trouble.
I have a plagiarism statement on my syllabus.
I think, but
We all do.
we all do, right? But how effective is that?
Yeah.
I think somewhere they know that they will clear out. And the problem is that some of our own colleagues, they are very hesitant to take an action. Maybe that is why the grad students they are so few in numbers.
Well, I can tell you that I've served on a number of panels with graduate students where they did plead that as a mitigating factor.
Yeah.
And the panel was very strict. They held them accountable.
Okay, that is good. If they have made a mistake, they should get a warning, and otherwise they should.
No, they held them accountable. And also what goes into the mitigation is if this has occurred previously. So if this is a first violation, if this is a second violation,
Exactly.
but you don't hear about that. So everybody here, I really encourage you, you do need to serve on these panels so you understand the process. So you don't hear about you can hear the students' statement about mitigating factors, but you don't know of their history until after you've made your decision
Right.
of whether or not they're responsible or not responsible. And then when you're just determining the outcomes, that's when you hear about whether they've had 14 previous violations or none at all. So I think that's very important to understand. So sorry, I didn't mean to
No, you're
usurp
right.
your.
And I hope I was understood when I said that. And that's to protect the student in all cases, whether it be behavior misconduct or academic misconduct. We don't want to bias the group
Right.
before they make that decision.
And
But
you're
once they do, we will share it and we'll say, we have 14 cases. And it goes into the rationale a lot of times. If it's more harsh, they'll say, we learned that this student had 5
Yes.
previous academic misconduct cases, and so therefore, we put the hammer down.
But the ones that I have served on, they were
graduate
graduate students and they were on a visa.
Mm.
It did not.
So let me ask a question, President Lopez, maybe you can give your insights given the experience. Suppose a hypothetical case, there's a PhD student working on some experiments. He is not getting the results. He
Yeah.
forges data.
Yeah.
Let us say.
I've been in 2 labs where that happened.
Okay, so suppose they are given their PhD degrees, and later on, there is a big blow up news story. Oh, this lab forged data, and the let us say faculty is innocent, hypothetically, and the student was responsible for the data.
Yes, sure.
Shouldn't there should be some serious consequence for that, right?
You know what, this has come to me so many times, and there is no answer that I know coming from accountability. And as I've been told, it's a decision of the faculty.
If you fake data, you're out.
Well,
No, what
no,
about
he's
the
saying
PhD
he's
degree?
already graduated.
Say that
He
again.
graduated.
What about the PhD? Shouldn't
He's
there be
already
some?
graduated.
Yeah.
This has been brought to me on numerous occasions. And you're the expert, so, but it's the faculty who confer the degree.
You can withdraw the.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Or supervisors approve it.
Yeah, we would definitely, in those kind of situations of that severity, we would be working with the faculty But yeah, we would, if we received accurate information, then we could go about pursuing that.
So you're saying that faculty, upon discovering this, should reach out?
They should
To
reach
your
out. We'll have a
office?
conversation to see how we can handle that situation.
Because I don't think that's ever been communicated to me before. I think they would go to the office, help me, ORED, instead of SAA.
Okay. Well, I know you can't go wrong with each other. We will make sure
Well, so I think that needs to be
I think-
conveyed to the
And I
faculty
think
senate.
one very important issue behind the graduation, like date of graduation and the graduate students and these things is like some sort of a pressure, which is, oh, you should not do this. The faculty should not take it to that extreme.
Yeah.
So I think like, I agree with that we should not overdo something, but I think like, as a flagship university, like we have very strong research departments, we need to, I think we need to raise standards everywhere. And so I think if we have this information on the website and also to the faculty that we are there to support you.
Yes.
Especially your office.
I think faculty should not be dissuaded.
Because the impression I got from, and I'm sorry to say that, a couple of people like I talked to, they said like, okay, what will happen? We will report, the student will know, I'm responsible for reporting, I make an enemy in the department, and SA will probably do nothing. So there's a cost benefit analysis there, and many faculty just don't report.
Yeah, okay.
So
We can definitely work.
That's a PR thing, for sure.
We can, this is very, very good information. I didn't know this in existence.
Just to mention one more cost benefit, not at the level of this, but the website. I find the website very unfriendly. In fact, every case that I have submitted, and thankfully it's not 40th semester or something, but every case I've submitted, I have written up a letter and gotten my materials together and just sent them in an email to somebody. I don't mess with the website at all. Because there's all this stuff on there about, like the date and time and location of this. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't an exam, right? I mean, it wasn't, there's just, there's a lot of sort of nitpicky information on there that makes it a really unfriendly experience.
We can revisit the website or revisit the academic misconduct submit sheet. I do know that certain, I've had faculty submit things, even just send it to me to say, I don't know where to go. And what we do, we put it into that document.
Yeah.
So if we get it, we have someone there and we'll just go ahead and put it into that.
Yeah, my experience after that has been fine.
Right.
But it's just because I said, you know what, I'm not doing it that way,
Submit.
I'm doing it this way. That seems to work.
Well, we don't want to keep you too long, and we appreciate, I'm glad that we've had this conversation. I think it's certainly been enlightening, it always is. And I do encourage you to reach out to the faculty senate to make a presentation and, get their feedback as well. And to reach out to incorporate faculty senators. We have some very active groups and some very committed faculty on the on our different ASH committee, on our CNC committee, on our ILC committees, and not that I want to draft them into further service, but they're extremely knowledgeable and really have the boots to the ground when it comes to these sorts of things. So, yeah, I would reach out in the fall semester, and so we'll be taking over. Professor Beside will be the one to reach out to, or Dr. Knoll, to schedule a visit to the faculty senate and recruit. I have had your office before your time. I have had your office come to the faculty senate several times to recruit faculty, but I think it's also important that this body participates on the panels and also encourages faculty senator participation on the panels. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, I really appreciate the feedback, I really, really do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm here, so let me know. We want to get this right, so let me know. Thank you all.
Very good. All right, returning to our agenda.
You made me think of the, on the graduate school dissertation approval form. You have to check that you as a faculty member of the committee checked it on Authenticate. So you have to agree that you already checked the dissertation.
Yeah, but if somebody forces the data,
Right, if you forge data, you don't know.
I've never
But you
had-
could tell if it was plagiarizing a lot, like you were.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
That I always do.
All right, friends, back to the agenda. All right, Faculty Senate, ASH Committee approval. Professor Kathleen Williams has agreed to serve another term. Yes, Dr. Knoll?
Yes, that's
All
correct.
right, is there a motion to appoint Professor Kathleen Williams to the ASH Committee?
Second.
All right, a first and a second, or a motion and a second, and is, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Professor Kathleen Williams is unanimously appointed to the ASH Committee for another 3-year term. Next up, we did have some, we've had numerous members leaving the university, and one has left the the Athletics Council. There was an election in the spring, our last meeting, for a member of the Athletics Council. However, a member has, like I said, since resigned. Professor Hand was the second, it had the second highest number of votes and has agreed to serve. Still very interested in serving. So is there a motion to appoint Professor Stephen Hand to the LSU Athletics Council?
I so move.
Second.
And second, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say
Aye.
Okay, Professor Stephen Hand is unanimously appointed to the Athletics Council. All right, our unfinished business, SCR 6, Professor Turan.
Yeah, so this was on from last week, is my understanding that we were gonna get a report about the nomination process, and we received a report today, but I think I do have to update some of my information, because the first time I've been told is that the Faculty Senate Presidents of LSU made an appointment was at the top of this meeting. And I do want to go on the record and say that I'm quite disappointed about the haphazard and rushed way in which I think this process has been carried out. I was surprised when I attended the COFA meeting last Friday that a decision was being made then, as it was my understanding from our last meeting that there was simply going to be discussion of the nomination process. The COFA members were given 3 pieces of misinformation, which is that they were actually the ones to make the appointment, that the nominee had to come from COFA, and that they had to make a decision that day, when in fact the decision is not due until July 15th. I walked out of that meeting quite confused about what had happened and the appropriateness of it. And I just think that this is nothing to do with Dr. Stump, for whom I have tremendous regard. I think he is very invested in faculty governance. But I was concerned that there's 1,700 faculty on main campus and additional other faculty who are eligible for appointment throughout the system who were not even considered. There was no discussion of the manner in which the committee was going to conduct its business, what attributes might be desirable in an appointee from the LSU system. And so just given, I think we have wasted a tremendous opportunity to really marshal the collective forces of our faculty across the system to fully consider every potential opportunity and to pursue what is perhaps one of the most important pieces of legislative agenda that we will encounter as faculty in our time at LSU, as it potentially could revise the very cornerstone of tenure upon which academic freedom and this institution rely.
Noted. Is there a motion? So we were, so just in response, I was informed that morning of all of the points of which I conveyed to the committee. There was absolutely no intentional misinformation. I was following the instructions that were literally being told to me as I was walking through the door. However, we did since revisit it with general counsel, and I was informed as of Monday, I think it was Monday, I don't remember. Anyway, earlier this week, that in fact, we needed to have a vote from among the faculty senate presidents. So I did exactly that, reached out to them, offered them every opportunity to nominate someone else or approve Professor Stump, following the instructions that were given to me by the administration. So, is there a motion?
I have a question, actually. So who gave you these instructions?
The administration did.
That's not a person. Who gave you these?
Well, they came from several sources, and it was finally Winston DeQueer, who also attended the meeting, who was there when we were doing this, that informed me early this week that it needed to go before the faculty senate president.
Right, but who gave you these pieces of misinformation that you then relayed?
Well, they were coming from the liaison, they were coming from the board of supervisors, and they were coming from general counsel. So I was getting several sources, yes. And it wasn't until Winston was there at the meeting, he was reading through, he was in attendance, he was making sure that we were following the instructions we were given. And however, as of Monday, the instructions changed.
And why wasn't this body consulted on either the nomination process or nominees?
We were told to have the election, it was our last meeting of the council, and we will not convene again until August. And the decision had to be by July 15, and we would, again, not be convening, we required a quorum. And I believe that's why we were instructed to have the election then.
But even after that, the COFA decision was overturned on procedural grounds, why then was this process not opened back up and the faculty senates on each member institution consulted?
They were.
We don't have to
The
consult it.
Senate president.
It's selected by
but
the
not
president.
but not the
It said
Senate.
selected by the president, yeah.
If the president's what they prefer, they prefer.
But the faculty senate executive committee is the delegated representative of the
It
senate.
says the faculty president.
No, I know, it says that, but the faculty senate, I mean, the faculty senate, even leaving aside procedure, I mean, I think there's a procedural argument to be made, but even in principle, as the representatives of the faculty, tenure is clearly a matter of significant concern to the faculty. There was time to, in this meeting today, meet with us to say, who do we think would do a great job? What do we know about the legislature? How do we do this? There's 3 weeks, the appointment is not due for 3 weeks from tomorrow.
We did talk about this several times at our meetings.
No,
We didn't.
no, we didn't.
That's CR6.
Well,
Well, not.
Yeah, you asked about it last
not-
meeting.
Right,
probably the
and
meeting
I was
before.
told that there would be a discussion of the approval of the appointment process at the COFA meeting.
Yeah,
And there was.
And there was.
Right,
And,
and at that
And
meeting,
they were appointed.
as the minutes reflect, I objected and I said COFA is not the appropriate venue for this because it's not exclusively composed of faculty senate presidents, nor are all faculty senate presidents members of COFA. My primary objection here is I just feel that the faculty have been poorly served in the way that this process has been conducted, and not given sufficient.
I have to say that all of the faculty senate presidents, with the exception of myself, voted, and could have nominated someone else and consulted with their faculty in the meantime.
But the
So-
LSU faculty wasn't consulted, that's the problem. Like LSU the main campus was completely in the dark.
So noted.
Noted, all right.
All right, so I move that the LSU BR Faculty Senate Executive Committee thanks Dr. Christoph Stump for his willingness to serve on this important task force.
Is there a second?
second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right, I will convey your congratulations to him. And he will be reporting back to all of the LSU Faculty Senate presidents as well as the Council of Faculty Advisors. And Dr. Basayev, I will remind him to include you in those communications. All right, Senate booklet.
No, sorry, I
Did
believe
I miss
EC,
something?
yeah,
Oh,
EC, I think.
gosh, I do that every time.
Sure, oh, no worries. So as I believe I forwarded to the executive committee earlier this week, as of, I believe Tuesday, the daycare has amended its calendar and rolled back the proposed changes for the 2022-23 academic year. It will now mirror the 2021-2022 academic year. Given that those changes were the immediate cause for which this committee looked into the situation at the daycare or the ECELP, and given that other parents have communicated to me that there does appear to be some more sensitivity to both faculty and parent needs among the administration of the ECELP, I move that we delay further consideration of this matter to the first meeting of the fall semester and cancel for the moment any invitations to representatives perhaps who we may have contacted already for a meeting and just see how things proceed over the next couple months.
Okay, point of clarification, the first meeting in the FSCC in the fall semester
Yes.
or the Senate?
Sorry, the FSCC, thank you.
Is there a motion to delay further consideration of this matter until the first meeting in the fall semester, first meeting in the FSCC in the fall semester?
Is there a second of his motion?
Yeah, I thought you motioned.
Yeah, he motioned it.
Oh, sorry, second, all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, Senate booklet.
So thank you to those who contributed to the pages I asked for. So I'm still waiting for one more thing from Dan, not to put you on the spot. And it's gonna be 20 pages. And Susanna also looked into Senate pens that we will go with it. Well, they're not gonna match, but yeah. But she had a quote for pens. I don't know if you have a quote for the booklets. I don't
Not
think
yet.
I gave you page numbers.
Yeah.
When we last spoke.
I don't have a quote for the booklet yet. They are waiting on the number of pages, but I have 2 quotes out for it actually, just to make sure. So they're just waiting on some information from us as well. The pen quote was 300, I think, is what you were saying. It was 181.17, so the cost is not that. Just to let you all know.
181 for what?
17 for the pens.
Pens.
300, yeah, 300 of them.
Pens are pretty cheap.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
And can I ask Susanna, do you know what's their timeline for production, for booklet production, so that we have a hard deadline on when to submit?
It depends on the number of pages, and it depends on how detailed all the pages are, the color, the amount of, if there's any bleed over, like if it goes past the printing lines, you can print on a computer and it doesn't print the whole page if you go beyond the printing setting for anyway, technical. So it just sort of depends. It shouldn't take too long though, because the digital print, so it's something that I will send to them and they'll just print it out in their, warehouse that they have.
Will you know, when will you hear from them for the quotes? Just
It should be this week.
like,
Mhm,
okay.
Like tomorrow, I'll let you
Yeah,
know.
just to have an idea.
Mhm.
So what is the size of this booklet? This small size which we give on the graduation ceremonies and so on?
It's something like that. I
That's what we were
think.
thinking of.
Yeah, almost think about an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, landscape folded in half.
Okay.
About that size.
So the price should not matter much, right? Like if we publish 80 versus 200.
Well, and that also depends too, because they do have a limited number, like a minimum number of printing, which I'm also trying to get that information from them. So we might have to print 250, which is their limit, their minimum, not 80 copies.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
I don't think like we should just print 80 or 100, right? Like we need to have booklets which work for a couple of years at least, once we print them.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And it will also be online, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
the information will probably change within the next.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is there gonna be any changes in the information that's gonna be in the booklet?
No, it's pretty standard
It's gonna be
stuff.
standard
Yeah,
for
pretty
several years?
standard. Yeah, I
We
mean,
don't have
it's
constitution, which we will change probably.
If you can get a fairly council together.
I feel like the only information that might change quite frequently is the leadership, the organization chart, which I'm having difficulties
Yeah.
getting.
That's the hard part, changes all.
But 95% of what's inside is pretty standard.
And Matt and Lee said at our meeting yesterday that the org chart is being updated.
Yeah.
Yes, I know
So they
that,
asked
yeah.
about that, so that hopefully will be available soon.
That's why I can't get it yet, yeah.
Or,
All right.
are you still thinking that you would like me to try and tech that thing up, Vanessa?
Say that again.
Are you still thinking you'd like me to try and tech up the booklet?
Let me wait for Susanna she said she will send me a layout, so we can,
Okay. Okay,
oh yeah, I'll be in
and if
touch.
I needed help, maybe Param or Jim, these guys probably know tech too, so
Mhm.
probably get some help.
All right, anything else on that? All right, last 2 orders of business. I think we have 2 nominees who have agreed to serve on the Faculty Senate Benefits Committee. Is there a is there a motion to approve Professors Lawrence Rouse and Roger Lane for the Benefits Committee?
Well, first of all, I'd like to ask, I guess Professor Tyrone had an objection to my continuing on the committee. Can you tell me what's the beef?
No, it wasn't a continuation of any individual. It was just, this just appeared on the agenda for the last meeting. And so I just wanted, in the interest of giving full consideration, wanted to give us some time to consider, different candidates.
Do you know anything that I've done on that committee?
No, it's not about you personally.
I would just tell you that the reason I've been on it so long is that the most egregious thing we have at LSU is the retirement program. And 10 years ago, myself on that committee, I was the chair of the committee at the time, and Kevin Gold filed a personal lawsuit against LSU and TRSL for the retirement system. We've actually paid some of the bills from the law office. They took the case because it looked like the ORP members might be $170 million behind what they should be. So it's gone through 3 judge panels, and it was approved going through 3 different judge panels. And so that means that it'll probably go to a jury trial, which would be great. It's one of the few things we can hope for. But time. It's amazing how long it takes for all these things. Second thing I did was last year I authored the resolution to give fair cost of living raises to all effect. That was my initiation. So I've been active on that committee. I don't like committees at all, but that's why I've been on there so long.
So can I ask a question? So this case which you are talking about, how long this has been?
This is the lawsuit.
Yeah.
At least 9 years.
10 years.
And what is the
Coming on 10
expectation?
years.
So like,
If I had an expectation.
no, suppose we win that lawsuit, will the members who are on ORP plans, will they get some sort of compensation?
Absolutely. We have the worst retirement program in all the SEC schools.
No, that I'm completely aware of. Like,
It's
I
less
think,
than 1/3 of the other schools, but the ORP people are actually getting only 6.2%. And our salaries contain 26% for retirement. So if I quit, 26% of my salary doesn't go to TRSL anymore. 6.2% goes to us in ORP, and 20% goes to TRSL, but we get no benefit from that.
okay, we pay 20%. I am also on ORP,
Well,
so
it's the
Your salary includes an additional 26% that is,
so 26% of 6.2%.
26% of your salary.
Yeah.
Not of your salary, but an additional 26% comes into the university, of which 20% goes to the TRSL and 6% goes to you. Now, for the TRSL members, all the 26% goes to the TRSL, but they get 100% benefit from that. We should get some percentage benefit from the 20% that our salaries produce. I mean, there's a real problem with that, a real problem.
Sounds like fraud to me.
Well, I think, let me make a recommendation that you have Professor Lane present and Professor Cope present, you update your presentation that you've given to the faculty senate, because many of the new senators, most of the current senators are unaware of it. And I encourage you to invite Professor Lane to give his presentation.
I have already spoken with
It's posted on the Senate website.
Yeah,
But it would be good to have both of you just update verbally.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
ask
I-
another question? Like, does your committee have the power to seek vendors? You see, like, we have been with TIA, and then there was this ING, which used to charge 1% and so on top of everything. But like, I have also in the supplemental retirement, and there's this vendor called Fidelity, which is now like pretty aggressive nationwide and with very low cost. Like, I know that this is decided somewhere in the legislation, but can your committee make a recommendation to add more cost-friendly vendors like Vanguard or Fidelity?
They have historically, actually, yeah.
We have met for those kind of things, but we haven't met with the vendors.
I think usually you meet with Tommy, but you know who you should meet with this time is, Lewis, VP Lewis, Kimberly Lewis.
We don't have dental insurance, for example. I mean, we've got minimal eye insurance, we got that, but the
Yeah.
dental insurance is nothing, we just pay it, right?
So, VP Lewis will be joining us at a future meeting, which is
July 21st.
July 21st.
Mhm.
So, hold those questions because she will be coming and she's new. I'm sure she's just wrapping her mind around this, but I think these are things that will be certainly legitimate to ask her. All right, back to the order of business, please. Is there a motion
I move to accept both candidates.
and a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. All right. Professors Lawrence Rouse and Roger Lane are appointed once again for a 3-year term to the Benefits Committee. All right, last order of business. The Faculty Senate Committee nominations are needed for the Integrated Learning Committee. Members, what are your nominations?
I'd like to suggest for Honors College, Belinda Davis. She's in political science.
Do you say Melinda?
Belinda.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
Belinda Davis. Okay. Others?
Anybody have a science idea?
Engineering?
Yeah. Who likes the undergrad?
Good morning.
I nominate Bill Gordon.
Who?
I have to think about hard.
Yeah.
Bill,
Well, if you think of somebody, send it to me.
Yeah. From engineering or from science? That's from science.
He's from science.
Yeah. Okay, engineering,
He's gotta think about it.
he's got to think about it. Okay, well,
Our design is one of the tougher ones.
yeah.
I don't know a lot of this.
Okay, so Bill Dorr from science, Belinda Davis from honors, engineering, is giving it some thought. Arts and design,
That's a tough.
I know. Anyone? All right, well, please forward, after you've given it some thought, please forward them via email to Dr. Knoll. She will then reach out to the individuals to confirm that they are willing to serve, and then they'll be brought before, the names will be brought before this committee for approval. All right, it is now 5:17 on June 23, 2022. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? And a second? All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. We are unanimously adjourned.
So the last thing, we did on that night was, I mean, I'm super close.
Suze, do you need some help dragging that across?
And they were here.
Yeah, apparently we don't care about flying tourists on walls.
Pretty